I've been knee-deep in Diary of a Wimpy Kid content for the past few weeks, working on a project you'll probably see in January. I really do love this franchise, the books and movies, not those ones. And it's taken me revisiting it to realize how much it impacted me as a kid, especially the writing. For a long time I've categorized the series as important to me, but I'm aware a lot of that is due to nostalgia. But upon reading the first few books again, I came to find out that, well, the first few at least, hold up extremely well as just being simple, funny novels. They're so deadpan. Once upon a time, there was this man named Mr. Shropsharp, who thought all these crazy thoughts. I don't know much, but I do know one thing. Polar bears are some useless animals. One day, Mr. Shropsharp took a ride in his car. Here I go. But then... Mr. Shropsharp, you would have drowned, but luckily Tubik here was sitting on an iceberg and he saved your life. Before, I said that polar bears are some useless animals, but now I can see that not every polar bear is so useless after all. It's like a Family Guy joke. Of course, the film adaptations are masterpieces in their own right and have become the staple for many childhoods of 2000s kids around the globe. Despite taking liberties in certain cases, they were big hits, elevating the source material to create, unironically, one of the best comedy trilogies out there. And I said trilogy. These characters and the actors' performances are so iconic that it's hard to believe we only see them for a collective 4.5 hours. Nothing more. They're so ingrained in my mind, it's like they're more of my family than my actual family. Well, except for Manny. He knows what he did. It makes me desperately wish that the series wasn't confined to a stagnant kids franchise, having to move on once the kids got too old. I understand that's what the books will forever be, but I don't know, what if the films decided to branch off? Become more of their own thing, follow along with these slowly aging characters? What could we see them do if they decided to tackle them with more mature themes? That would never happen, of course, but I can dream. I mean, hey, anything would have been better than what we ended up with.
Congrats, Diaper Hands, you've gone viral.
What kid is laughing at this? This got me thinking. What if the Diary of Wimpy Kid films decided to go forward instead of back? Showing us a slightly more mature take on a young boy coming to terms with changing as a person, realizing that the world doesn't revolve around him. What if I were to tell you there's a movie out there that is exactly that? A movie that, coincidentally, released the exact same year as Wimpy Kid. A movie that was also based on a book, showing us the life of an average kid learning to be better. Huh. Let's check it out. But first, you know what I also know of? That this video is sponsored by NordVPN. Because I signed the contract. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN does it all. Like encrypting your online data to keep away anyone from harvesting it, a threat protection feature that can recognize any malicious link, gives you alerts on password attacks, hides your IP address, scans suspicious files for malware. What I'm saying is if you want to stay protected online, then Nord is your best bet. With all this and 24/7 customer support, 30-day money-back guarantee, and being available on all major platforms, why wouldn't you check it out? Especially now that you can go to nordvpn.com/lsmark to get a 2-year plan with 4 months completely free. Once again, that's nordvpn.com/lsmark to get a 2-year plan with 4 months free. Be sure to stay protected. And thanks to Nord for sponsoring this video. Also, the LS marketable figure is only available for like 10 more days, and we're over 50% of our way to the goal. Be sure to check it out soon if you're interested or just want to support the channel. Thanks. This is Submarine, one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not a particularly well-known film, wasn't a smash hit or anything. I mean, hell, it was helped funded by the fucking British lottery. This was not a big release. While initially coming across as yet another addition to the tired, oversaturated, quirky teenage boy coming-of-age genre, Submarine manages to provide a melancholy yet hopeful look at growing up, highlighting that exact moment when something can go from fun and juvenile before suddenly getting real, along with how easy it is to allow these situations and the fear and anxiety they cause to consume you, and furthermore how that can follow you into adulthood. Yeah, no, it's not a movie about an actual submarine. It's this little-known thing called a metaphor. Again, this is not a unique genre to tackle. There have been countless attempts at capturing that awkward stage in one's life, to varied results. I never understood that being such a detriment, however. I feel a story can be retread as many times as possible as long as it accomplishes at what it sets out to do. You know, a good movie is a good movie at the end of the day. Who cares about what similarities it shares with others? And Submarine does all this and more, combining excellent direction and cinematography with a phenomenal soundtrack and charming cast to create what is without a doubt my favorite coming-of-age film of all time. Well, after Wimpy Kid, of course. It stars Oliver Teat, basically British Greg Heffley. He's incredibly full of himself, coming up with these insane delusions of grandeur. It opens with him imagining how his classmates would react to his death. I think that tells you everything you need to know.
Don't ask how, just know that I'm now more powerful than ever.
Oliver is a strange boy. He's very particular about things and thinks of himself as an intellect, always spouting off random facts to come off smarter than he is, and believes that he's the nicest guy around, always spinning things to be in his favor. For example, the central conflict of the film comes from a girl in his class, Jordana. While initially passing it off like he wants to be with her to increase his popularity, it's clear he likes this girl and wants to be with her, and so puts his own morals aside to impress her. This involves collectively bullying the lonely girl in their class, indirectly throwing her in a puzzle and causing her to stop coming to school. He's clearly aware he's done something wrong here and is terrified of the ramifications of this, yet can't admit it. And so he decides to type up a list of ways to break out of a victim cycle to give her. That is quite possibly the most team thing he does in this film. Like Greg, Oliver has a very childlike view of the world, very simple. They both fill in that same archetype. I don't find it to be a coincidence that Greg is so often compared to the character of Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye, a book that is very deliberately referenced by Oliver.
And this is The Catcher in the Rye, a great example of a modern American novel. Salinger's very influential.
He's got extreme main character syndrome, believing any situation in life is something he can conquer. Problems aren't something to be talked about, but fixed. We see that his home life isn't ideal. His parents have clearly fallen out of love with each other, both wanting more with their life but settling with where they're at. And while his mother's methods of coping is to put on a happy face and act like everything is fine, his dad chooses to dwell in his feelings, allowing them to overwhelm him to the point where he can't even muster to get dressed most mornings. It's a very depressing movie in theory, but because everything is shown from Oliver's point of view, we instead focus on his reactions to this, which is coming up with harebrained ideas to try and fix their marriage. This includes monitoring their sex life and attempting to improve their relationship by writing fake love letters from his dad to give to her. Although unlike the American sitcoms the character is influenced by, this obviously doesn't work. Instead of mending their marriage, this only serves to further tear them apart, something he fails to even recognize, let alone take accountability for. And so his relationship with Jordana is something he can use as an escape from all this. Allow himself to just be a kid and have fun, that's all he wants. The central theme of the film is undoubtedly change, and the inevitability of growing up. And we see this happen in real time as their relationship progresses. Jordana is your typical Tom girl, presenting a hard exterior, smoking, she's very intense. Even when she becomes his girlfriend, she's incredibly cold, never wanting them to be intimate with each other aside from mindless kissing. After enough time has passed, he finally builds up the courage to ask her for sex. Something she seems open to. And so we see him go through this whole ordeal of generic movie romance cliches. Things he believes will impress her, like dressing up nicely, making them a meal with wine, before finally getting up to the room where his views are shattered.
What now?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, you're a serial killer.
A lot of these teen comedies are criticized for using sex as an excuse to show gratuitous nudity, and as some kind of goal for the characters to achieve, so I find it really impressive how Submarine has it not only serve a purpose, but also highlight the underlying theme of the movie. As Jordana awkwardly leaves the house after being crept out by this display, Oliver gives her a note he intended on her reading afterwards. This note shares Oliver's unfiltered thoughts on her. He lets her know how he truly feels without putting up a facade.
We've lost our virginity, but it wasn't like losing anything. You're too good for me. You're too good for anyone. Sincerely, Oliver.
He tells her that he loves her, and because of that she returns in there. Yeah, this is a pivotal moment in the film that I'm glad they don't draw too much attention to afterwards. But it's the perfect microcosm of Oliver's arc throughout the movie, putting up an unrealistic image of himself, getting nowhere, and only making meaningful connections with people upon letting his walls down and allowing himself to be honest. As the two grow closer and the barrier between them start to diminish, Jordana starts to let Oliver in, explaining that her mother is very sick with cancer, only having 2 weeks to live. And she wants to meet him. And by God, it's the most real depressing scene ever. They're having Christmas dinner early in case she doesn't make it till then, and you just have to sit and watch them eat in awkward silence.
Sorry.
This is the moment where everything changes. In other typical films like this, I feel like this would be the moment where Oliver starts to understand her more, that she isn't this hard, intense girl, but instead someone who's just scared and coping with potential loss. allowing him to comfort her and for them to finally bond on a meaningful level. But no. This makes Oliver extremely uncomfortable. Him being able to see Jordana for who she truly is, a person, freaks him out. It gets too real. His brain is violently hitting the abort button. He's gone too far in. He's been using this relationship as a fun, childish escape from his own parents' problems, but now he's got a whole new set of issues that he has to mentally deal with and fix. And instead of doing the right and easiest thing, be there for her, like always, he tries to find a solution. That being, to help better prepare her for the potential of coping with the death of her mum, he decides he's gonna go and feed her dog rat poison and kill it. I think the writer knew this would be going too far, and so before he gets the chance to do it, her dog dies off screen. Hooray. Now that Jordana has opened herself up to Oliver, though, she starts expecting things of him, asking him to visit her mum in hospital after her surgery. He knows that in this very moment, if he does that, he is committing. And so instead of coming to visit, or instead of being honest with her about the issues he's having at home with his parents, he chooses the approach that a child would, to simply ignore the problem and hope it goes away. This is paralleled with his dad's subplot, who is so depressed at the thought of his wife leaving him for another man, who's so caught up in his own feelings that he's ignoring his wife. It's not something he's unaware of, he simply just can't fight it. He becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, the results of his depression consistently letting her down and driving him away. Oliver always chooses the easy way out, rationalizing that the best option is always the simplest one that benefits him the most. If her mum survives, then she'll be too relieved to be angry with him, and if she dies, well, she needs time to grieve. He's such a prick. This predictably does not give Oliver the outcome he sought, eventually becoming so preoccupied with saving his parents' marriage that he fails to recognize that he and Jordana aren't even together anymore. Finding a new boyfriend, he assumed everything would just never change. The film does an incredibly good job at showcasing how one's reaction to change can so easily lead to depression, each prominent character representing a different reaction to change in one's life. Oliver's mum didn't envision this being how her life ended up, having forgotten dreams of being an actress. Because of her unhappiness, she seeks to find her lack of fulfillment through other means, eventually leading to her having an affair. Jordana is dealing with the concept of loss and learning to embrace these changes in her life, becoming a more honest person and letting Oliver in because of it. Oliver's dad was denied his dream job for something so inept. And so instead of embracing his new job, he decides to dwell, becoming depressed and being unable to move on from it. Oliver similarly has this same reaction, instead in relation to the very concept of change itself, wanting everything to stay the same forever.
I want my family back. I don't want anything to change.
They subtly portray this character growth through the different color choices used for every character. His mum prominently wears a lot of bland, eggshell-shaded clothing, representing her boring and unfulfilled life. His dad is most often seen wearing black. However, when at his most miserable, his clothing changes to mostly dull bronze. Oliver and Jordana are shown wearing a lot of blue and red, respectively. However, the more he starts to hang out with her, the more red is slowly introduced to his color scheme, culminating after they fuck as he walks down the stairs donning a fully red sweater. There's even a fun background detail cleverly alluding to this, like a poster in Oliver's room reading, "His death was red." After his relationship with Jordana ends, we see Oliver fully succumb to his sadness, sulking around in a familiar brown gown. There's a constant theme throughout the film that the stuff that happens when you're a kid won't matter when you're older, that this is just a silly high school relationship that, statistically, is likely to not end well. But what Oliver comes to realize here is that his parents are wrong, that the things that happen to us when we're younger and how we choose to react to them is what shapes us into the adults we eventually become. His relationship with Jordana does matter, maybe just not in the way they see it. Because of this, he decides to do something he's rarely seen to do: be truthful. He admits to Jordana why he couldn't be there for her, because it frightened him. And with everything going on with his parents, he instead chose to shut it all out to ensure he keeps full control over his destiny. But that's not how it works. The more everything stays the same, the more he finds himself being lured closer and closer towards the deep end, trying to keep his head afloat. See, for those who don't understand, the submarine is a metaphor for depression, and while this doesn't work, he is able to have one more conversation with her. He continues to be honest and open about why he is the way he is, and she's finally able to chastise him for playing with her emotions. It's only then, when they're both finally truthful with each other, that something new is able to begin. Change can be good. It's also a really funny movie. Sorry for the change of tone, but I feel like that's worth highlighting. Despite the subject matter, it's not a super depressing film. There's much levity to break up all the seriousness. That scene where they're all having Christmas dinner together makes me incredibly uncomfortable and sad every time I watch it, but I can never not laugh when Oliver narrates the experience, commenting that he hopes she's able to live to see another Christmas because the dinner she made wasn't very good. It's very dry British humor. You're not going to find any zooey mamas in here. But similarly to Wimpy Kid, the first-person perspective gets you so accustomed to the main character and their asshole tendencies that it horseshoes around and they become kind of charming. I love Oliver. What elevates all this is not only the fantastic score, but also the tracks that Arctic Monkey singer Alex Turner created solely for the film. I don't want to tip off the copyright bot, but I'll play you a couple songs so you see what I mean. It's great, see? Check out this one. No, that's a favorite of mine. It's got a perfect balance of nostalgia and melancholy, complementing the select scenes they're used in beautifully. I would highly recommend checking out the soundtrack. I really do wish we got to see more films like this. I'm aware it's an overdone genre, but one that I don't think is tackled as much anymore. Sort of peaked around 2012 in my opinion. I at least hope I've interested some of you into checking it out, even if I kinda spoiled the whole thing, whoops. But I still think it's worth watching, especially if you are a fan of series like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Don't watch the one on YouTube though, they added a bunch of really unfitting music because I guess Harvey Weinstein didn't think people could pay attention for 5 minutes without a wacky soundtrack. Either way, I pray someday we get to see more coming-of-age films aimed at teenagers that don't overly rely on generic swearing and edginess. More films about a confused kid just trying to figure themselves out in the world. And I wish franchises were more willing to be experimental. I mean, everything is rebooted the second it doesn't immediately bring positive results, so where's the harm in it? Make an adult Greg Heffley, cowards! There's still time. And now, I know what you're thinking at the end of all this. Was this all just an excuse for me to gush about this film I adore for 15 minutes? Yes.